Hey everybody, what's up? K Creative here with Bamboo Solutions, doing our SharePoint weekly newsletter roundup. Yeah, here we go. So if you aren't already registered for our newsletter, we send it out every Friday at 8 a.m. There's a nice link for you to register for that if you're interested. This has got all kinds of great information about the Microsoft SharePoint ecosystem and anything that may ever touch that particular platform. This newsletter highlights all the latest happenings in that particular industry and kind of compiles it all, puts it into an email in your mailbox every week on Friday. So anyways, that's what we're doing today. We're going to go through the newsletter together and just strike up some conversation if interested. Yep. Time to put the O's hat back on. Yep. Wasn't an amazing game yesterday, but represent. All right, guys. So here we go. Let's get into it. We've got a lot of content to cover today. Whoops, wrong thing, wrong screen. Here we go. I'm back. Sorry, wrong screen. All right, so here we go. Weekly newsletter roundup. So if you haven't seen it before, this is what our newsletter looks like. It's called the SharePoint Weekly Roundup. We got a little plug here for the Twitch stream where we review it here on Fridays from 12 to 1. Usually ends about 12:30, so it's not that long. So we stream on Twitch and YouTube simultaneously. So if you're interested, you can find the archive of all these past videos there in YouTube, more than likely. So let's dig in. Here we go. Top news stories. 5 things you're doing that will doom your Office 365 deployment. Let's check that out. Sounds kind of grim. What are you doing to mess that up? This guy calls out quite a few topics here that may impact your 365 deployment, such as lifting and shipping when you should be planning and re-architecting. He says that by simply migrating what you have in SharePoint Online, you're starting off with an outdated system and potentially painting yourself into a corner when support for all that classic stuff kind of goes away, right? So we find that to be the case too here at Bamboo, where we really would prefer you kind of migrate data as opposed to migrate everything as is. That way we can get you into the new experience and get you using new processes and tools and things like that that are available. Another thing he says that'll doom your 365 deployment would be refusing to change the way your employees work when you should be giving them better ways to do their jobs, right? So that's pretty self-explanatory. But he says, excuse me, however, that solution almost certainly will not work on modern page, blah, blah, blah. Where'd he go? There was some point down here I read earlier that I liked. Don't try to force SharePoint Online to be something it's not by insisting it work exactly the same way it did before, right? Making decisions for your users when you should be determining what they need, right? That kind of applies across the board. It's a blanket statement, I think, but yeah, right? Let's facilitate as opposed to declare. Putting up walls when you should be putting up fences. Teams may be one of the scariest solutions for administrators ever created because it does have such a governance I guess, you know, the responsibility is on the user, right? Yeah, it's kind of scary, right? Not a lot of governance there that's forced across the organization within teams. Anyone can create a team, right? So, whoop. First thing many organizations do is shut down users' ability to create teams. So, you know, it's kind of taken away from some of those productivity enhancements that those users might be able to kind of crawl out and find on their own, right? You know what I mean? Discover and find new creative, innovative ways to leverage those within their team specifically. And if you turn that off, apparently you're not trusting your users, or maybe there's a bigger underlying issue there, right? What did he say here? Don't destroy the collaboration you're trying to build. If you restrict your users from using tools that you're paying for and have control over, then they're going to go and start using Slack, Dropbox, Zoom, and a bunch of other tools that you don't have control over. And that may or may not be the case, right? Yeah. Repeating your mistakes of the past. Don't look to move to 365 as something you have to do. Look at it as something you get to do. And I firmly believe that too. It is, it's an amazing opportunity to get people and organizations moved on to 365. I love that opportunity. Just so much happening there. What else? Microsoft Kaizala. Have you guys seen anything about this? This is really cool. It it was a Microsoft Garage project, and it's going mainstream. So it's a group messaging service. It's now available to all Microsoft 365 and Office 365 commercial customers. The GA comes after the rollout of its Pro version to all the Office 365 commercial subscribers in November of last year. The phone number-based system first launched in 2016. It was a garage project, like I said. So anyways, I don't know exactly what its capabilities are, but I was watching this video earlier. It's kind of a use case, if you will, for the Philippine Airlines crew. And it looks to me like group messaging tied to phone numbers, kind of like SMS, right? So obviously it brings a more formal, work-related group message system on mobile devices. So Teams does that too, but this is phone number based as opposed to, server application based. So interesting to see what they're going to do with that. They are going to roll it out into Teams as a feature of Teams over the next 12 to 18 months. So that's going to be cool. And then they plan to add a whole bunch more features to it. It says like right to left languages for Hebrew and Arabic, the ability to invite users via email, the option to sync your organization's Azure AD with Kaizala, and admins will also receive a new capability to designate policy management. So cool stuff there on Kaizala. I think I'm saying that right. And then the future of Microsoft Edge. Yeah, what is the future, right? So this article is interesting because he points out that Microsoft Edge is still receiving features, the old Edge, right? And if you haven't heard, Microsoft is taking Edge to a Chromium-based browser. And what that means is it's going to be very similar to how Google Chrome works, and all the intricacies of loading web pages and presenting things to users, right? So we may someday get past the issue of having to accommodate all of these unique browsers when we do web design development. And this is sort of a step in that direction. So anyways, this guy here, Brian, I think it's how you say it, Brian, he wrote about, why are they still developing features for it? Well, it's still a product, right? It's still got huge use across a population of business users and commercial and home users, right? And so they have to continue to support that. And then, a lot of this stuff, I think he says, the first question was why Microsoft continues to create new features for Edge, right? So the second question is, why is it so important that Microsoft have its own web browser? I think I know the answer to that one. If Microsoft has determined that it has lost the browser war, which I don't think it's determined that, I think it's important that it still ship default browser with Windows for their sake, maybe not all of our sake, but for theirs for sure. And so yeah, I wouldn't say they lost the browser war. I think that they're pivoting to a proven technology that the rest of the tech space has adopted as being superior, right? So I can't say that's a loss. I think it's a smart move. I think it's a good pivot. Then why not just let everyone use Chrome or Firefox? And again, I think it's because they need to maintain a product that provides the same functionality, but keeps them in the Microsoft ecosystem. So anyways, so good post on that, good sort of a thought-provoking post there. So Microsoft's making big Windows 10 update changes starting with May 2019 release. You'll notice we have another announcement down here in the top news stories for Microsoft announces the Windows 10 May 2019 update. So you're going to see some cross information here between these two posts. They're very similar in nature. But they're starting to try to figure out the naming convention behind Windows updates, right? And how those are going to roll out. And then what are your options for adopting or installing these updates? And so they go into detail here, obviously, as to what that rollout process looks like. What are these, update versions, and what are they going to call them, and blah, 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 blah. So, so what they're going to do, though, that's really interesting in this post is that Microsoft's going to enable Windows 10 home users to pause feature updates for 35 days. So once you make the choice that you do want the update, you're kind of stuck in, you're going to get the update. But you can pause it or delay it for up to 35 days, which is interesting, right? So it tells me that Microsoft's kind of built in a 35-day window that when they roll out a patch and we have another, issue like we did previously, where that update came out and it started deleting people's files, right? So everybody was like, oh my God, right? So this gives Microsoft a 35-day window to fix those kinds of things, I think, right? So I could say, I heard bad things, I'm going to pause it for 35 days, so I'm going to get something in 35 days, it sounds like. Hopefully they have it fixed by then. So anyways, interesting post there on the processes and I guess maybe the future of Windows updates being rolled out and your options. So then I'll just jump down to this one while we're on the topic. So they were previously using, was it biannual updates for Windows? Well, now they're talking about the naming of those. And so what are they going to call the May 2019 update, not April 2019 update? Because I think it was supposed to be the April update. Microsoft explained that Windows 10 May 2019 update would stay a full month in the release preview ring. So they're going to try to get it tested more through that insider preview ring of Windows users, so that by the time it rolls out, it's been a little bit more thoroughly vetted and tested and whatever. So that's exciting. I think it's okay that it's what, April to May. So while Windows 10 May 2019 update would be first offered to users who manually check for updates, it would actually come with a new option to download and install the feature updates separately from the rest of the updates. So that means that manually checking for updates would no longer get the feature update automatically, as Microsoft wants to separate the updates and give users more control. True that. All right, so another top news story, we're jumping back up here. CIA long relied exclusively on Amazon for its cloud computing, and now it's seeking multiple providers for its massive new contract. This is a giant contract. If you haven't seen the news on this, it's, where's it at? Tens of billions of dollars to more than one cloud provider by 2021. That's the plan, right? So the cloud effort here for the CIA is known as the C2E, Commercial Cloud Enterprise. Sorry. It builds on an earlier $600 million cloud computing contract that was awarded by Amazon's cloud computing division. That was back in 2013, but it runs in parallel to a separate $10 billion cloud effort being pursued by the Defense Department. If you're not familiar with that one, I think that's the one referred to as JEDI. So it's interesting, right, that you've got the CIA's cloud adoption plan here, and then you've got the DoD's over there for what they say, $10 billion cloud effort. Yep. So down here it talks about how, where's it at? So anyways, the plan for the CIA now is to get to that same concept to where they can use multiple providers. So in 2013, they got the AWS contract for $600 million. Now they're going to open it up, and they're going to try to use multiple providers to provide cloud computing services for the intelligence community there within their control. So let's see here. IBM's federal manager said some interesting things about being a proponent of opening, obviously, the options to these organizations for multi-cloud providers. There was something down here around JEDI, and I was trying to find it. There it is. So the CIA's new cloud computing effort comes as the Department of Defense's parallel effort, known as the Joint Enterprise Defense Infrastructure. For short, it's JEDI. Which is stalled in a protracted legal battle, of course. But at the root of the conflict, it's the Department of Defense decision to turn to just one provider for the JEDI contract, which it's not what the CIA is trying to do here. Anyways, it's really cool and interesting to see these huge undertakings of trying to adopt multi-cloud providers. I think that's really neat and necessary. Last top news article here for the day. Should you go for a hybrid cloud solution right now? Thank you so much for the pop-up. Read through this earlier. This was interesting. Some of the stats here were kind of interesting. 97% of businesses are using some form of cloud computing, as well as a widespread enterprise focus on adopting public cloud technologies, right? That's pretty neat. 97%. Right? I kind of wonder how much of that is Azure and Office 365, obviously, because we work in the Microsoft stack, right? So I'm curious to see that or understand that. Compelling data about hybrid cloud usage was also exposed, where 84% of the 786 respondents indicated that they had multi-cloud strategies. And that's pretty interesting too. But, as you may or may not be aware, using hybrid scenarios is not always the simplest thing, right? Like they really market it and sell it like it's just hybrid, it's not a big deal. It's just this short little word, hybrid. It just means you got infrastructure both in the cloud and on-prem, and they work together, right? But some of the current challenges that he talks through in this is that that it's real easy to scale your existing system, you know, and porting your entire infrastructure to the cloud, not a big deal, right? But really, that's not always the case, and there are always these small, intricate details that are very complex eventually. You know, some of your internal stuff just may not work that well with an external or non-native to your environment type of application, right? So it does a good job of highlighting a lot of that. He does talk briefly here about how to implement a hybrid cloud, and then one platform hybrid clouds now and in the future. So good points in here if you're very interested in hybrid cloud computing and maybe some of the impacts or shortcomings of those particular scenarios. We're at 12:17, so we're 17 minutes in. I got 13 left. Let's see if we can get through the around the blogosphere here in about 13 minutes. How secure is your data in SharePoint on-prem and versus online? That's interesting. So Microsoft's made SharePoint one of the most powerful enterprise content management and team collabs platforms available in the market. What does he say? This brings up the question, how secure is your data? Well, this article will help you in analyzing the security and data protection features available in SharePoint on-prem and online in terms of authentication types and disaster recovery. So let's look at authentication types. SharePoint on-prem supports all major authentication types: claims-based, forms-based, SAML token, Windows Classic. SharePoint Online does single sign-on Active Directory, synchronized identities, federated identities, multi-factor. So just kind of show the options there between the two environments and allows you to analyze maybe what fits your needs better. For disaster recovery on SharePoint on-prem, you've got standby data center recovery options, hot standby, warm standby, cold standby, Azure Site Recovery. But for online, you've got data protection lies with Microsoft, right? So they handle all of it. So they're responsible for that redundancy and all that stuff. So ain't no worries there, right? Supposedly. Data protection from human error, SharePoint on-prem, SharePoint online, got some points there to talk about the safeguards in place to do that, and then here's sort of a recap of his final verdict. He does state that Microsoft understands the ever-growing demand of better data protection for their customers, and therefore, with each new version of SharePoint, there's an improved data protection architecture. But on-prem does give customers a complete control over that farm to set up an authentication mode that integrates well in their existing infrastructure, and obviously get more granular control over all those other topics we just talked about as well. But with SharePoint Online, you do get multi-factor authentication mode, which is considered some of the safest at the moment for security, and disaster recovery is the responsibility of Microsoft with a promise of 99.9% uptime, right? So all very compelling reasons. Then they have various options for data loss protection, including third-party cloud migration tools. So good analysis there for, or at least a nice call out of some of the points there for each, and allows you to kind of determine what fits you better. 2 quick tips to get to avoid clicking empty folders in SharePoint without metadata. What is it? So they work with a lot of clients from time to time. Many aren't ready for metadata, which is kind of a shame. You get into SharePoint, and unfortunately, or fortunately for us as vendors of SharePoint consulting, right, there are a lot of bad implementations of SharePoint out there, and a lot of it is really people trying to migrate off of a shared drive, and they just dump it all into a SharePoint library, and they're losing all those capabilities around metadata. And so he talks a lot about, you know, here we're talking about clicking on empty folders when that does happen, and not getting any response or results, right? Because it's just an empty folder, but you didn't know that because there wasn't any metadata around a folder in SharePoint. So anyways, good post here on talking about how you might be able to solve some of that and get through that. So continuing on here around the blogosphere, Power Apps with SharePoint permissions. If you're not familiar, Power Apps is Microsoft's new cloud-provided service to pretty much build applications using their app builder against SharePoint or even other data sources as well. So it's become somewhat of a very strong tool to build mobile and desktop interfaces against your SharePoint data, and allows you to build custom conditions and logic around those forms. So very cool. So anyways, Power Apps with SharePoint permissions he's got somewhat of a workaround here. So if you watch this SharePoint Power Hour, then you might have noticed that the data source info function didn't give him accurate permission information about the currently logged in user's access to a certain list in SharePoint. So he's got a workaround for that. And that's what this article kind of highlights there for you if you're interested. That was actually by Laura Rogers. Nice. So building an app with SPFX, React.js, and TypeScript, part 4, SharePoint data access in the property pane. Got a nice post. This is a series of posts here by Jason. And so he's continuing on with the development tutorial using all these technologies. And then this specific one here is about SharePoint data access and that property pane. So he'll kind of walk you through that. Nice technical post. You can follow along this entire series and pretty much create your new, not quite a hello world, but a nice tutorial against the SharePoint framework and the new development methods against SharePoint using some of the latest technologies like React, Redux, etc., etc. So good post there if you're trying to get spun up on that kind of a skill set. What else? Display the flow button in SharePoint 2019 modern lists and libraries. One of the major advantages of setting up a hybrid SharePoint 2019 environment is that you can use the latest and greatest tools of Office 365, even for your on-prem stuff. So one of the tools is Flow, and by setting up your environment correctly, you can now have triggers and actions in Flow. I think you got to use, I haven't looked at his walkthrough here. I was assuming you'd have to use the gateway, I think it's called. Let's see here. It doesn't mention gateway. The gateway is a tool, though, that you can install in your infrastructure on-prem that allows Microsoft Flow, which is a service out in the cloud, to see your servers and interact with them like they were up there. But I don't see that here. But it's having a button in each list. Okay. One of my good friends, SharePoint MVP and co-author, yep, just released a new open source app called SharePoint 2019 Flow extension, which bridges some of the gap. Okay. It provides a flow button in the command bar, as you can see in the screenshot below. So here's a link to get the solution. You can install that on your 2019 environment if you're interested. Pretty neat, nice little handoff there. What else? 5 ways to use the new countdown timer web part in SharePoint. Let's see what that is. So it was April 1st when he posted this. Greg. So I thought I would use the opportunity to show you some fun ways you can use the countdown timer web part. So he says, number 5, countdown to SharePoint Go Live. Yeah, you could definitely do that. It's fun. Countdown to the start of the weekend. Who's not motivated by that? Countdown to the boss going on vacation. When the cat's away, the mice will play. Count the days since some new feature appeared in SharePoint. Geez, nowadays I don't think that'd ever get past 1. Count the days without SharePoint training. Well, yeah, if you're in this space and you're not training daily, weekly, yeah, that's not going to be good. There's a link to click on and get some of their SharePoint training. So here's some of the config settings if you're interested in what that countdown timer web part looks like. You can set your date time, count direction if you want to count up or down, display the timer as days, call to action on, so you can have a button there like this. How to add countdown timer web part in SharePoint. So add a web part. There it is, countdown timer. There's the settings we just talked about. Nice, huh? Countdown timer, there it is. It's actually already in the SharePoint Lookbook sites. If you're familiar with SharePoint Lookbook, I think it's sharepointlookbook.azurewebsites.net, I think. Just do a search for SharePoint Lookbook and you'll find it. But some of those templates that are in there now that can be used in the PnP provisioning templates, I believe, include that countdown timer. SharePoint Framework development tips, even more easily debug production version of your SharePoint Framework solution. This is posted by the SP blog. This is Sergey. So the problem was when you package your SharePoint Framework solution, SPFX build pipeline minimizes and optimizes all your TypeScript code. It's not a problem for dev because in serve mode, SPFX build pipeline generates source maps for you. Source maps allow you to open original TypeScript files, source files in the browser developer tools with full debugging. So it's not possible for ship or production mode. So here's your approximate production code. All right, try fix number 1. What if we simply tell SPFX to generate source maps and include them? Doesn't work. What if we use inline source maps? Not good, because it adds a lot to resulting file size. So the fix was SPFX uses Webpack for source map integration or generation. Webpack has a lot of options for source map generation and storage. Check it out. You can store them in a separate file, generate inlined, and many other options. It's not enough. You can use source map dev tool plugin for even more control. So that's nice walkthrough, nice example there of an option for getting some production debugging capabilities, right? Manage your SharePoint using bookmarklets. What's a bookmarklet? I don't even know. Modern SharePoint is great and includes a lot of new functionalities that I love, but at the same time, it changed the location of some links that were one click away on classic SharePoint. If you want to take advantage of this functionality that is available in all modern browsers, copy the examples below and add them to the bookmarks of your browser. Oh, I gotta go jump on a call here in 3 minutes. Open site meetings. On modern SharePoint, the site settings is hidden inside the site information menu. This requires an extra click to open a page to use the available that used to be available in the settings menu. To avoid it, you can use the bookmarklet below. It works for modern and classic. Okay. So you're building some browser bookmarks to access quickly those places that you used to get very, I guess, seamlessly previously in the classic version. Interesting. Good post there for, you know, if you're commonly accessing those and now you're having to do a couple extra clicks, yeah, it's probably going to slow your daily productivity down a little bit, right? So that's a good hack to get to it quicker. Getting started with SPFX, React.js, and TypeScript part 5. So we had part 4 above. Part 5, he's got styling components. I'm not going to go too much into it, but again, good series on how to leverage those new technologies that everyone's using in the SharePoint framework space. Create an external content type in SharePoint to connect to SQL data. External content types are used to create external lists in SharePoint. Before you can create the list connection, you must first have created the content type. So there's a walkthrough on how to do that, connecting to SQL data. I'm going to hack through this one real quick. So SharePoint modern view formatting with JSON. I think, is this Chris Kent? Who wrote this? Doesn't say. So anyways, talking about some view formatting here, and if you're not familiar, SharePoint Online now has a column for, oh, is this view formatting? Sorry. So with JSON, you can use JSON to now format your views and do some pretty awesome stuff there within the settings of the page. Does it show the property pane here where you do that? So he saved it as a file. What else? Where's he put it? Styling structure, adding JSON to SharePoint. Here you go. So he goes to format current view now, in case you were interested, and you can upload this JSON file. So just a quick, easy, well, not easy probably, but very cool way to be able to update those views now with JSON. All right, so that's it. That's the top news stories for today. That's around the blogosphere. Last thing, all the events that are going on in the SharePoint space right now for you if you're interested or in these areas. Got a lot of SharePoint Saturdays being called out, obviously. I won't count them all out, but you got a bunch there. April 11th online, we have a webinar going on for our parent-child solution, so please check that out. It's an amazing new product that we're about to deliver. Actually, we've already launched, but it's just awesome. Building relationships between all your list data and being able to see the related data in one place without having to like go to each list independently to see what's related to that one item you're looking at. Really cool stuff. SharePoint Saturday. So then 17th online, we got a knowledge base webinar for our knowledge base product. We also have the knowledge base cloud part webinar going on the 18th, the next day. We've got parent-child webinar again on the 25th. And we have a list rollup webinar for our list rollup product on May 1st, and then the rest are SharePoint Saturdays. And then you got the SharePoint conference, obviously, May 21st, 23rd in Vegas. So that's it, guys. That is our weekly newsletter roundup. I really appreciate you guys jumping on. Thank you for watching. Again, if you're interested in registering for our newsletter, you can sign up on our website. There's also a link in chat if you're interested to register for that. And that will come to you every Friday, give you all this information. And then if you're interested, you can join me here on Fridays at noon and we'll go through it together. All right. Y'all have a great weekend. See y'all Monday for Daily Open Chat at 11 a.m. Eastern. Bye.